She shot her own children, then calmly called a lover. Why did no one stop her? This is True Crime Unveiled.
At 10:48 p.m. on May 19, 1983, a blood-red Nissan Pulsar rolled slowly into the emergency bay of McKenzie-Willamette Hospital in Springfield, Oregon. The car was barely moving. The driver, a 27-year-old woman, casually tapped the horn. An emergency room nurse stepped outside, expecting a minor injury or someone needing directions. Instead, she found a scene that would permanently alter the history of American true crime.
If someone is arriving at an emergency room with a severe situation, they do not casually tap the horn. They lay on it. They scream for help. What did the nurse actually see?
The nurse saw a woman step out of the driver's seat. Her name was Diane Downs. Her left arm was wrapped in a blood-soaked towel, but her voice was completely flat. She looked at the nurse and said, "Somebody just shot my kids."
She said it just like that? No panic? No screaming?
According to the medical staff, she was completely devoid of emotion. Nurses rushed to the car. In the front passenger seat was 8-year-old Christie. In the back were 7-year-old Cheryl and 3-year-old Danny. All 3 children had been shot at close range. Cheryl was already dead. Christie and Danny had catastrophic, life-threatening injuries. The hospital erupted into a desperate trauma response.
And where is the mother during this?
Diane stood off to the side. As doctors fought to save her children, witnesses noted that she appeared remarkably calm. She did not ask if they were going to survive. She did not beg the doctors to save them. Instead, she asked to use a telephone to call a man in Arizona. That quiet, unsettling reaction in the hospital corridor was the beginning of an investigation that would expose a deeply disturbing reality.
When a tragedy like this happens, shock can make people act in bizarre ways. Was it possible she was just completely shut down by trauma?
That is exactly what investigators initially wondered. Shock is unpredictable. But as the sun rose over Springfield, the physical evidence began to tell a story that contradicted almost everything Diane Downs said. Before we look at the blood, the missing gun, and the trial, we have to look at the children who were in that car.
Because they are the center of this. Who were Christie, Cheryl, and Danny before that night?
They were quiet, resilient kids who had learned to navigate a very unstable environment. Christie, at 8 years old, was the oldest and the protector. She often took on a maternal role for her younger siblings. 7-year-old Cheryl was gentle and timid. 3-year-old Danny was described as energetic and attached to his older sisters. Their parents had recently divorced, and Diane had moved the children from Arizona to Oregon to take a job as a postal worker.
Moving to a new state as a single mother is stressful. Were there signs of trouble before the shooting, or did they seem like an ordinary family adjusting to a new life?
On the surface, they looked like a family trying to start over. Diane worked her postal route and maintained a tidy home. But beneath the surface, there was a profound obsession. Before leaving Arizona, Diane had engaged in an affair with a married man named Robert Knickerbocker. He was her co-worker at the post office in Arizona. Knickerbocker had made it explicitly clear that he did not want children. He had no interest in being a father to Christie, Cheryl, and Danny.
Wait, so he was not moving to Oregon with her? She was carrying this obsession across state lines?
Exactly. She moved to Oregon, but she refused to let go of Knickerbocker. She wrote him hundreds of letters. She called him constantly. Her diaries from this period, which investigators would later read, were filled with intense, consuming passages about her desire for him. The children were rarely mentioned, but on the evening of May 19th, Diane decided to take the kids out for a drive.
On a Thursday night? It was a school night. Where were they going?
Diane claimed they drove out to a rural area outside Springfield to go sightseeing. They drove out past Marcola, along a dark, isolated stretch of Old Mohawk Road. The sun had set. The road was completely deserted. According to Diane, as she was driving back toward town, she saw a man standing in the road waving his arms. She told police he was a bushy-haired stranger.
Hold on. A mother alone with 3 young children on an isolated, pitch-dark road stops her car for a strange man waving his arms?
That is what she claimed. She told detectives that she stopped the car and rolled down the window. She said the man demanded her car keys. She said she refused and got out of the car to confront him. At that point, according to her story, the man reached into the car with a gun and started shooting her children.
She gets out of the car? If someone is threatening you and demanding your keys, why would you step out and leave your children trapped inside?
That was the first massive red flag for detectives. But her story became even more complicated. Diane claimed that after the stranger shot the kids, she wrestled with him. She said the gun went off during the struggle, shooting her in the left forearm. She then claimed she pretended to throw her car keys into the dark brush to distract him.
Wait. It is pitch black. A man just shot her children. She throws her keys away into the brush. And then what? How does she drive away?
She told police the man turned his back to look for the keys. She said she then reached into the brush, found her keys in the dark, got back into the car, and sped away to the hospital.
That logic is completely broken. She throws her keys, instantly finds them in the dark brush, and the killer just lets her get back in the car and drive away?
And the physical reality of her drive away from the scene was even stranger. The hospital was several miles away, but witnesses who saw the red Nissan Pulsar on its way to the hospital reported that the car was moving at a slow, casual speed. One witness noted it was going around 5 to 10 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. Another driver actually passed her because she was driving so slowly.
Her children are dying in the back seat, and she is taking a slow cruise through town?
Yes. And when she arrived at the hospital, the interior of the car was a nightmare of blood. But investigators noticed something deeply wrong with the crime scene inside the vehicle. This brings us into the forensic investigation. The police seized the car and began analyzing the blood evidence. If a stranger had leaned through the driver's side window to shoot 3 children, there should have been physical evidence of his presence.
Right. If he is firing a weapon inside a confined space, there has to be blowback or blood transfer on the doorframe.
Exactly. But the driver's side door panel had absolutely no blood spatter on the inside. The steering wheel had no blood on it. There was heavy blood pooling in the passenger seats, but the driver area was inexplicably clean. Prosecutors later argued that this proved no one leaned through that window to shoot the children.
Does the lack of blood spatter actually prove murder? Or does it only prove her story about the stranger was a lie? Because legally, those are not the same thing.
That is a crucial distinction. Legally, the blood evidence only proved that her version of events was highly improbable. It did not directly put the gun in her hand, but the medical evidence regarding her own injury began to close that gap. Diane had a gunshot wound to her left forearm. When forensic experts examined the wound, they found dense gunpowder residue around the entry hole.
Which means the gun was fired from point-blank range.
Yes. But more importantly, the trajectory of the bullet traveled at a steep, downward angle. Investigators interpreted this finding to mean it was almost physically impossible for a man standing in front of her to inflict that specific wound during a struggle. The angle and the powder burns were completely consistent with a self-inflicted injury. They believed she held her left arm out and shot herself with her right hand.
What about the murder weapon? If she shot them and then drove to the hospital, she had to get rid of the gun somewhere along that route.
Police searched miles of the roadway between the crime scene and the hospital. They never found the gun. But they knew what they were looking for. The bullets recovered from the children were .22 caliber. When police investigated Diane's background, they learned she had recently purchased a .22 caliber Ruger pistol in Arizona.
Did she admit to owning it?
She admitted she owned one, but she claimed she had left it behind in Arizona, or that it was missing. So Oregon investigators contacted authorities in Arizona. Police went to the property where Diane had previously lived. They searched the grounds and found unspent .22 caliber casings scattered in the dirt, likely left over from target practice.
Could they match those casings to the bullets from the crime scene in Oregon?
They could not match the bullets themselves, but they could analyze the tool marks. When a gun cycles a cartridge, a mechanism called an extractor pulls the casing out of the chamber. This leaves unique, microscopic scratches on the metal. Forensic experts testified that the extractor marks on the unspent casings from Arizona perfectly matched the extractor marks on the spent casings found in Diane's car in Oregon.
Was that forensic method accepted science at the time? Or was it something the defense could easily tear apart in court?
Tool mark analysis was widely accepted, but the defense heavily challenged its reliability. They argued that tool marks can change over time, and that mass-produced firearms might leave similar scratches. The defense used this to argue reasonable doubt. They insisted that the prosecution was building a case on circumstantial evidence, a missing gun, and a mother's strange behavior.
And they had a point, right? Without the murder weapon or an eyewitness, the prosecution is asking the jury to make a massive psychological leap. How do prosecutors bridge the gap between a lying mother and a murderous mother?
They bridged it with motive. The prosecution introduced Robert Knickerbocker. He took the stand and testified that Diane was deeply obsessed with him. He confirmed he had told her he did not want children in his life. The state argued that Diane decided to eliminate her children so she could return to Arizona and offer Knickerbocker the child-free life he wanted.
That is horrifying. But did the defense create a counter-narrative? Did they try to prove the bushy-haired stranger actually existed?
The defense leaned hard into the stranger theory. They pointed out that police had arrested other men in the area who roughly matched the description Diane gave. They argued that the police suffered from tunnel vision. They claimed investigators decided Diane was guilty on night 1 because she did not cry at the hospital, and then tailored all the forensic evidence to fit that theory.
So the jury is looking at a missing gun, a disputed forensic match on the casings, and a mother who behaves completely inappropriately. That is a dangerous combination for a prosecutor. It leaves room for doubt.
It absolutely left room for doubt. But the prosecution had one final piece of evidence, and it was the most powerful testimony of the entire trial. Christie Downs, the 8-year-old who had been shot in the chest, survived. The bullet had caused a massive stroke, leaving her partially paralyzed and struggling to speak. For months, she could not communicate. But slowly, her speech began to return.
They put an 8-year-old stroke victim on the witness stand in front of the mother who allegedly shot her?
They did. The courtroom was completely silent. The prosecutor asked Christie if she remembered the night they went driving on the dark road. She said yes. He asked her if a stranger reached into the car. She said no. Finally, the prosecutor asked her, "Who shot you?"
And what did she say?
Christie looked at the jury and said, "My mom." When asked why she did not scream or try to run, Christie explained that she did not understand what was happening until it was too late. She said her mother leaned into the back seat and just started shooting.
That destroys the stranger theory instantly. How did Diane react to her own child saying that on the stand?
Diane maintained her flat, emotionless demeanor. But she had made one more calculating move before the trial began. She had deliberately gotten pregnant while out on bail. She arrived at her murder trial heavily pregnant, hoping the jury would look at her and see a sympathetic, loving mother who was bringing new life into the world.
That is deeply manipulative. She used a new pregnancy as a courtroom prop while on trial for murdering her other children.
The prosecution made sure the jury saw through it. In June of 1984, the jury deliberated. They did not struggle with the tool mark evidence or the missing gun. Christie's testimony had anchored the state's case perfectly. Diane Downs was found guilty of murder, attempted murder, and criminal assault.
What was the sentence for something so calculated?
The judge sentenced her to life in prison plus 50 years. The judge explicitly stated that he intended for her to never breathe free air again. But the story had one brief, chaotic coda. In 1987, Diane managed to escape from the Oregon Women's Correctional Center by scaling a fence. She evaded capture for 10 days before police found her hiding in the home of another inmate's husband.
Did she ever confess? Or does she still claim the stranger did it?
She has never confessed. To this day, she maintains that a bushy-haired stranger on a dark road destroyed her family. She has repeatedly been denied parole. Christie and Danny were adopted by the lead prosecutor in the case, Fred Hughey, who had spent countless hours sitting with them in the hospital. They grew up in a safe, private environment, far away from the woman who tried to end their lives.
It is almost impossible to comprehend the betrayal. A child looks to their mother as the ultimate source of safety, to realize in the dark that the person supposed to protect you is the one holding the gun.
It is a betrayal that defies basic human nature. The Diane Downs case remains a chilling study of narcissism, showing how quickly a human life, even the life of a child, can be discarded when it stands in the way of a fatal obsession. If this case left you questioning the limits of human behavior, subscribe for more careful investigations into cases that expose the darkest corners of criminal psychology.
And tell us in the comments what you believe was the true turning point in this investigation, because the quiet moments in the hospital speak volumes.
If this episode was worth your time, a like helps support the channel and keeps these stories in front of people who value facts over sensationalism.
Stay safe and keep questioning everything.